In today's video, we'll be fixing the New York Jets. What's going on? I am Matt O'Leary, and today I am tasked with the impossible, and that is fixing the New York Jets. But before we get started, I just wanted to mention that you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and make sure to please subscribe if you enjoyed the video. So now let's get right into it, and like I said, I'm going to attempt to fix the New York Jets. Now, this is what I would do if I am in charge, not what I think the Jets are going to do, because in all reality, I think the Jets probably make limited moves and go somewhere like 8-8 next year. Now, if they listened to me and did these moves, I would like their chances a lot better. So without further ado, let's jump right into it and start with some cuts. So right from the bat, if I'm put in charge, I'm making two cuts right away. The first is Spencer Long. He was atrocious at center last year. They lost a game in Miami specifically because of him. In Sam Darnold's worst game, it was because the center couldn't snap the ball. Spencer Long, yes, was hurt, but he was not good as a center this year and was a very mediocre to below average guard when they moved him over to left guard. Ultimately, he has zero dead cap, so it costs you nothing to part ways with him. It actually will save you money, so I make that move right away and look for an upgrade. Second, I am parting ways with Isaiah Crowell. He is $2 million against the cap, so this will save you $3 million. This would be a very effective move because you would then have to obviously pay Crowell and Spencer Long, which both guys underachieved last year. And also, this was last year's haul when you had $100 million in cap space. You walked away with Spencer Long and Isaiah Crowell. Thank you, Mike Maccagnan. But you have to be the bigger man here, Mike Maccagnan, and admit when you were wrong. You did so with Terrell Pryor. You're going to have to do it with Spencer Long and Isaiah Crowell too. Next up, after we do some nice cuts, we are also going to make a couple of trades. The first one, well, they both have to do with the draft, but you'll see. The one is a draft day scenario, and we'll start with that one. So the Jets right now have the third pick overall in the NFL draft, and they do not need a quarterback. That is very different from a lot of NFL teams. A lot of teams do need a quarterback. You look at the Giants, you look at the Jaguars, Denver, and potential other candidates who want to move up in the draft. So I picked one of those teams who I think is going to want to move up in the draft and get their guy. So assuming that San Francisco stays at number 2 and Arizona stays at number 1 and Nick Bosa is off the board, I think the New York Jets should 100% trade back. I absolutely do. So I would trade the number 3 pick to Jacksonville for the number 7 pick, so you're swapping spots there, the 38th overall pick, so their second rounder, a 2020 second rounder, and cornerback A.J. Bouye. Now, let me explain where I got this logic from. So, just last year, the Jets traded from 6 up to 3, and they landed Sam Darnold. They gave up 3 second-round picks. So, to move from 7 to 3, I have a pretty similar trade. I have them swapping picks, obviously, 2 second-rounders, and A.J. Bouye. Now, think about this. Isolate A.J. Bouye. If you were to do a trade for him today, what do you think his value is? Probably a second-round pick. So instead of making it 3 second-rounders, I am making it 2 plus a starting cornerback. And that starting cornerback makes roughly $15 million a year for the next 3 years. The Jaguars had no cap space at all. So they would potentially get their quarterback and also free themselves of nearly $15 million in cap space this year. Now, to put things in perspective, Bouye was the 22nd ranked cornerback by Pro Football Focus. The Jets signed Jermaine Johnson last year to a big money deal, and he underperformed. So hopefully adding a guy like Bouye, who could be very well in that Greg Williams defense. I think they need, obviously, to address the cornerback position because you're losing Morris Claiborne. You're most likely going to lose Buster Screen also. So you address 2 needs. You move back, get a second-round pick, get another second-round pick next year, and get a starting caliber cornerback. Yes, he's making $15 million a year, but when you have over $100 million in cap space, you can afford it. My second trade that I also make is I am trading Leonard Williams, the former 6th overall pick, yes, from 2015. I'm trading him to Cleveland. Yes, Greg Williams' former team. I think the Browns could definitely use some help on the interior defensive line. Obviously, Myles Garrett is a beast and a game wrecker on the outside, but on the inside, they could use some help. So I am flipping Leonard Williams to Cleveland for the 49th overall pick. So now you went from having 0 second rounders to 2. And I know what a lot of people aren't on board with trading Leonard Williams. Well, the other half are. It's really split right down the middle. But With Leonard Williams, I don't think he has good value. If you pay him what he's due for next year just on a 1-year deal, it's going to be like $14 million. No, thank you. I don't think he is worth that kind of money. I think he is better off in a trade if you get a second rounder for him. So Jets walk away with a starting cornerback, 2 second rounders this year, and you move down, but you should be able to get just a fine player at 7th overall. So next we will get into what my mock draft will look like, and we'll start with round 1 and pick number 7. So the Jets trade back and will take Jonah Williams, the offensive tackle from Alabama. Now, I would not be opposed to taking him at 3. I do think that if the Jets move back, he could potentially fall, because then you have guys who should have been higher because teams are trading up for quarterbacks continue to drop down the list. And 7, I still think he should potentially be there if teams like Tampa Bay don't take him, which I think is a possibility. They could potentially go corner, maybe Greedy Williams in that spot or somebody else. But ultimately, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Jets to go with an offensive tackle and upgrade over Calvin Beachum, just because, yes, I know he had an okay year this year, but also keep in mind he's getting up there in age and he is average. This could potentially fix his position for the next 10 years. And Jonah Williams could also probably play guard at the NFL level. So that is definitely something that I would look into. Next up, we're going to round 2 and pick number 38. And I am taking wide receiver out of South Carolina, Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo Samuel had 882 yards receiving last year, 11 touchdowns. He's a great route runner, and he's got good hands. Obviously, the New York Jets need some help at the wide receiver position. It's been something that they needed to address for a while now, especially after Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker left. Those were big household names. I like Quincy Enunwa a lot. I like Robbie Anderson a lot. I defend them all the time, really, but you need depth at the NFL level. You can't have Andre Roberts as your number 2 receiver against the Chicago Bears. That's exactly what happened in 2018 with the New York Jets. Can't have that happen again with Sam Darnold if you want him to continue his development. Add depth. Samuel does just that. Then with my 49th overall pick, I am taking Chris Lindstrom, a guard from Boston College. He can start from day one, and it adds depth to the offensive line. Again, the Jets' O-line is one of their biggest issues. So in the first 2 rounds, I am addressing that. I am getting my left tackle and my new left guard, because keep in mind, the Jets are going to lose some guys on the offensive line in free agency. It's something to keep in mind. Brian Winters should probably be here, but you never know what happens in free agency and if anyone wants to come in and make moves. So we will see what happens there. Moving on to round 3, the Jets also have 2 third-round picks. With my first of the 2 third-round picks, pick number 68, I am taking a running back, and I'm going Benny Snell Jr. out of Kentucky. He had over 1,400 yards, 5.0 yards per carry, and will turn 21 this month. So he is a very, very young prospect. I like that a lot. Something Mike McCagnon does far too often is draft older prospects, 23, 24 years old. Draft younger. Sam Darnold was 20 years old when he was drafted. Benny Snell Jr. would be 21 when he's drafted. I like that. Please give me Benny Snell. I think he could potentially be a nice complimentary back. He's really an all-purpose back, but we'll see later on who I'm also adding to the running back field. But definitely adds depth because in all likelihood, Bilal Powell is gone. I like, again, another guy that I've defended for the end of time. He is a really, really great talent, but he's going to be over 30 years old, coming off an injury. Are you going to pay him? Probably not when you have a chance to potentially upgrade the position. Now, with the second third-round pick, I'm going with an edge rusher. I'm going Joe Jackson out of Miami. He had 8.5 sacks last year, and he adds depth to that Jets defensive line, especially at pass rush. Listen, I don't have to be the one to tell you. You know that the Jets have lacked a true pass rusher since John Abraham. He was last on the team close to, what? How long ago is that now? 15 years ago? That's insane to go this long in today's NFL without probably a top 3 important position in the game today, an edge rusher. You have to get after the quarterback, and Joe Jackson in the 3rd round is pretty good value. Moving on to the 4th round, I am going to go corner, another position of need for the Jets like we mentioned. Yes, we addressed that in the trade, and you could also address it in free agency, which I will eventually get to. But I also think you have to take some swings in the mid to late rounds. I am going with Trayvon Mullen from Clemson. He's a press corner, which is good because that's exactly what the Jets are going to need. We'll need some time, probably, but eventually could be a CB2. And Lamar Jackson's his cousin, so you know he has a ton of athleticism in his blood. Obviously, look, He's not going to be a cornerback 2 from day one. Have him like 4 or 5 on the depth chart for a year or two. Then when Tremaine Johnson probably gets bought out, which is a likely possibility in the next few years, then you slot him up and you have AJ Boye as your number 1. But for right now, just add depth to positions you're bad at. That's what the NFL is all about. You need depth. It's proven. Every single year you're going to have injuries no matter what. Get depth. Round 5, pick 130. I am going back to the wide receiver pool, and I'm going with Paris Campbell from Ohio State. A huge speed threat. He has raw talent. He has potential. Probably a special teamer, all things considered, but willing to take a swing on someone like that in the 5th round. I don't want to take a swing at an interior defensive lineman in the late rounds. Focus on the offensive side of the ball. I know in the Super Bowl yesterday it was a low-scoring game, 13-3. I get all that. The defense wins championships. Guys, we're all out there. And to an extent, it does. But the Jets have also spent so much time and resources into the defensive side of the ball for the longest time that their offense surely lags behind. Really focus on the offense in this side of the ball, in this draft, rather, and really get after it. Now, in round number 7, I am going with Devontae Davis, another cornerback. He's from Texas. Again, you need depth at the position. Take a swing at a position of need in the 7th round. Likely doesn't turn into much, but I'm willing to take that risk. So once more to recap all the way through. Jonah Williams, offensive tackle, Alabama, 1st round. My 2 second-rounders, Deebo Samuel from South Carolina, wide receiver. Chris Lindstrom, guard from Boston College. Those are my 2 round 2 picks. In round 3, I'm going running back, Benny Snell Jr. from Kentucky. I am also going Joe Jackson, edge rusher from Miami. In round number 4, we're going Trayvon Mullen, a cornerback from Clemson. We are also going with Paris Campbell, wide receiver out of Ohio State in the 5th round. And then the Texas cornerback, Devontae Davis in the 7th round. So that's my mock draft. We already did a couple of trades. Now let's finally get into the free agency period. And this is what I really want to talk about. So Le'Veon Bell would be my, obviously, first call. I think the Jets desperately need help on the offensive side of the ball. Now, I know you drafted a running back, which is great because you can get great value from running backs in the 3rd and 4th round. We've seen it time and time again, but they need all the help that they can get. And paying Le'Veon Bell is a rare instance. I'm usually not a take a running back in the 1st round guy or pay big money to a running back kind of guy, but Bell's a little bit different. He can run. He would instantly become their best receiver also. And you have so much cap space, you don't even know what to do with it. Don't pay Terrell Pryor. Don't pay Spencer Long. Don't pay Isaiah Crowell. That's the bottom of the scrap heap guys that you got last year when you had a ton of cap space. Go out, get the best free agent on the market, and I would give him something like a 4-year, $60 million contract, roughly a $15 million cap hit. I think that makes sense. You pay him while Sam Darnold is on his rookie deal, and then you get the hell out of there. He's 27 years old, or he will be 27 this year, so you have him for a few more years in his prime, and then you get out when it's time to pay Sam Darnold. I think that makes a ton of sense. Next up, I have someone to replace Leonard Williams. And I know you're saying, well, if you traded him away, why not just keep him on the roster? Well, not only am I replacing Leonard Williams, I am upgrading. And I am signing Grady Jarrett, a former defensive tackle for the Atlanta Falcons. And I am giving him a big-time contract of 5 years, $80 million, roughly a $16 million cap hit. It is worth it. I know defensive interior lineman, that's not something that usually gets huge paydays, but he also gets pressure on the quarterback and creates sacks, something Leonard Williams doesn't do. It's all about getting after the quarterback in today's game. He's good at stopping the run up the middle. He is definitely worth that big-time contract, and I'm willing to do it. Next up, we are going to the offensive line. Once again, we're really reshaping this offensive line, and we're going with the center, Matt Paradise from the Denver Broncos. He is getting a 4-year, $40 million contract, so roughly $10 million per year. I think it makes a lot of sense to upgrade. He's the 2nd-ranked center by Pro Football Focus. Missed some time with an injury, but he's usually pretty consistent. I expect him to bounce back and have a very, very solid year. Next up, we have to also address the edge rusher. We drafted one in the 3rd round. We got to pay one too. And I am going with Trey Flowers from the champion New England Patriots. New England has proven time and time again that you can't pay everybody, and wouldn't surprise me at all if they let him walk. He is very young, still just 25 years old, and I am all for him. I'm going 4 years, 60 million, so roughly 15 million per year. He would be one of the best edge rushers on the market. You got to assume that some of the bigger name guys are going back to where they currently from, like Lawrence would probably return there. D Ford is probably going to return, and Ford realistically is more of an outside linebacker. You need someone who could put their hand down because you're running a 4-3 defense, and you need your 4-3 defensive end to be your pass rusher instead of your 3-4 outside linebacker. That's why Flowers makes a little bit more sense for the Jets, and that's why I would go all in for him. Next up, I am also adding to my wide receiver core. I want to get a really good slot guy, and that is Adam Humphries from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm giving Humphries a 4-year, $42 million contract, so $10.5 million per year. Again, that's kind of a lot of money for a slot guy, but I know he's not a number one. He's a good wide receiver, though. He had over 800 yards last year. You just add quality depth. Now you have Humphries, you have Anderson, and Enunwa. That's a pretty nice trio. There's no big star in there, but that's fine. You don't necessarily need the sexy star wide receiver. You just need capable players, and that's exactly what this does. It adds depth to the position and talent, something the Jets desperately need. Next up, you're probably going to need a new outside linebacker because let's face it, Jordan Jenkins is your prototypical 3-4 outside linebacker. I'm going with Anthony Barr. I'm giving him a 3-year, $33 million contract, so $11 million per year. He's a solid outside linebacker, knows how to play in the 3-4, so I am signing him to add with Darren Lee and Avery Williamson for a very nice linebacking core. Listen, I like Jordan Jenkins. I think he's an okay to probably a slightly above average starting outside linebacker, but he is not a 4-3 outside linebacker. He's your prototypical 3-4 outside linebacker. I don't think he fits. I think he's someone who's not going to make it in this new regime. He's probably going to be someone who's either cut or looked to be moved in some way, shape, or form. So just something to keep an eye on, and I think that's definitely an upgrade with all due respect to Jenkins himself. Okay. Next up, I have to replace Buster Screen, who's my slot corner, so I'm going and signing one of the better slot corners out on the market, and that's Bryce Callahan from the Chicago Bears. I think you give him something like a 3-year, $21 million, so $7 million per year. I think that makes a lot of sense if you're the New York Jets. Definitely in today's NFL, you need to have 3 quality corners, and having him, Tremaine Johnson, and Boye is a really good trio, and I am on board with that. Next up, I just want to talk about one more free agent that I would add, and this would be my number 2 tight end. Chris Herndon, I think, is going to have a really good year next year as the true number 1. I expect him to continue to grow. A really nice mid-round find for Mike McCagnon last year. I am citing this guy, Jesse James, to be my number 2 tight end. He was formerly of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I am giving him a 2-year, $4 million contract, so $2 million per year. A little bit of a raise. He's still on the younger side. He has shown the capability to get some reps. He's a good blocker. He can receive a little bit out of the line position, obviously, so look for the Jets to add some depth to the tight end field. So there you go. This adds up to roughly $86.5 million. It still leaves you with some room to work with. Obviously, there'll be more contracts moving in and out, but that's just my general consensus of what I want to do in the draft and free agency. Next up, let's take a look at some of the depth charts. Okay, let's start with the offensive depth chart. Obviously, at the quarterback position, you have Sam Darnold, who had a pretty good rookie year. You're looking to grow from him. I have Davis Webb staying as my backup quarterback. Moving on to running back, you have Le'Veon Bell as the starter, Snell as the number 2, and Eli McGuire as the number 3. A pretty nice running back trio, if you ask me. I'm not as high on McGuire as a lot of other people are, and I think Trenton Cannon really isn't an NFL quality running back, so I'm looking to upgrade, add through the draft and through free agency. Looking at wide receiver, I'm going to go with Anderson and Samuel on the outside. Obviously, you drafted Samuel in the 2nd round. I think he just adds depth, like you said. He could be your 4 wide receiver and then potentially move up when either Anderson or Humphries is ready to move on. But Humphries in the slot with potentially Campbell, who you took in the 5th round behind him, and Enunwa in the outside. You can move these guys around. Really, all 3 of the main guys, Anderson, Humphries, and Enunwa, can go in the slot or outside. So it's a really versatile trio with Samuel waiting in the wings. Listen, in today's NFL, they're going more spread as the years go on. So they look to add talent. I think this does just that. At tight end, you have Chris Herndon, James, and Leggett as your 3 tight ends. I think that makes a lot of sense right there. And Herndon should get most of the reps as he had a very solid rookie year. As for the offensive line, a much improved unit for them. You have Jonah Williams for left tackle, Lindstrom, your left guard, Paradise at center, Winters at right guard, and Shell at right guard. Right side, a little bit weaker than the left side, even though the left side is a lot younger and more inexperienced, but you really have that veteran center who is very, very solid to anchor that down. So I absolutely think that the offense is looking much better. As for the defensive side of the ball, I definitely see improvements there too. Let's look at the defensive line first. I'm going with Flowers as one defensive end, Jackson as the other, and I have Shepard and Jarrett in the middle. Shepard really had not the best rookie of the years, did not have a whole lot of impact there, but if you're paired with someone like Grady Jarrett in the middle, you should be able to wreak some havoc. Moving on to the cornerback position, you have Johnson and Bouye on the outside. Callahan and Nickerson could potentially look at your slot corners, and Mullen, who you add through the draft, will also be in the mix there as well. Looking at the linebacking core, you have Lee, Williamson, and Barr. That's a pretty solid linebacking trio. Obviously, Darren Lee was drafted as an inside linebacker, but Williamson is the better of the two, and also I think Lee is going to be someone who will transition to an outside linebacker. Yes, he has some speed, so I put him on the outside with Barr on the other side. As for safety, you know what you're getting. Marcus May is very solid when healthy. We saw that last year and really in his rookie year too. And Jamal Adams is probably the best player on that defensive side of the ball. Definitely something to look at. So there it is. Those are my improvements to the New York Jets. Let me know what you think in the comments below, or get at me at social media at Matt O'Leary NY on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. Let's go Jets.